Welcome everyone to this second episode of the Privacy Rules Flash webinar on COVID-19. We are discussing about the way in which different countries are facing this issue with a privacy perspective. And in particular today, I'd like to ask our experts which are the challenges that COVID-19 is bringing in their countries and which are the solutions. And I would like to start with Volker Wodianka from Germany.
Yes, thank you. I think we have to be careful in these very special times, not to limit privacy rights on situations that are of course need special measures. But when as we checked, the authorities always say that there's not a change in the legal basis principles. There's not a change in data minimization principles. Of course, which is kind of interesting, we lay a focus on laws that usually are not so in the focus of the privacy professionals, like the laws on infections, and data transfers based on that, and also notification duties based on that for health data. That's kind of an interesting area. But the principles remain, and what I also see as more like a proactive, also business case solutions that arise around COVID-19 are often, of course, software based, where businesses now provide services to document employee personal data for the good. And there are new businesses now coming in the virtual world, which of course also receive more attention. Home office solutions, and everything's going more virtual. And I think these are the interesting aspects of the COVID-19 in terms of, if you want to say so, for also business, in these difficult times.
Volker, thank you very much. And Gabriel, to you, which are your thoughts on the challenges and solutions in Switzerland?
In terms of data privacy purely, so the Federal Commissioner issued a few thoughts on some topics already, such as on geo tracking. So cartography tracking, that's how it's called, but less on HR privacy, I would say. So I think that's one of the massive challenge at the moment for employers, because it's the economy is going to probably have hard times, and if not collapsing, and people are just doing what they think is good, exchanging information. And there's also a difficulty in those times to prioritize. And as I think, just to concur with what Volker said, we should not undermine the people's privacy, because in those times it's not a priority at all. So I would expect a bit more guidance for employers and how to do it, but also to follow the news, because it's evolving not every minute, but almost every day, and we should remain careful to just process health data only based on what's necessary at the right time.
Perfect, Gabriel. Thank you very much. And Geert, what about Belgium? Which are the challenges and solutions there?
Yeah, from both a data protection perspective and a public health perspective, then. I agree with Gabriel. There is a lot of interesting food for discussion for legal scholars, which in the next weeks and months will certainly develop. In Belgium too, there is already a Data Against Corona task force established by the Ministry of Public Health and Digital Agenda and Privacy, where they are going to use telecom data from the telecom providers in the fight against Corona, which has been subject to a data protection impact assessment, etc. Interesting there. But in general, I do agree with the position of our data protection authority that we should not adopt very disproportionate measures with the crisis as an excuse, so we can still reflect. And it's about striking a balance, of course, because on the one hand, we want to protect public health and people. On the other hand, we shouldn't go too fast either. There are indeed daily updates And as Gabriel said, we should follow them to make sure that we are not doing anything that afterwards can be seen as unreflected.
Perfect, Geert. Thank you very much. And Volker, do you think that COVID-19 has raised the bar for higher limits to the privacy rights?
Well, let me give an example. When you discuss the visitor or the guest process in companies now, you can discuss this from a very data minimization point of view and say, well, I only provide information and then provide access to the facility, or don't provide access to the facility when symptoms and these well-known points are ticked. But on the other hand, you can collect name, company, temperature, as we heard, and these discussions are very active. They and there it really depends also on the controllers. How far will they go? Also, how important is an infection for the company? Does their business stop immediately, or can they work from home? This is really something we have to differentiate, and therefore there's not a common answer to these difficult questions. But again, I think it's very important to remain with the data protection principles and tendencies to allow usage of data that has been collected for other purposes is, I think, especially in the area of authorities using telephone data, which is really an issue of limits of purpose. No? And I think we're very, very clear about that.
Thank you, Volker. And Bernd, to you, I would like to reconnect to my question on the previous session in episode 1, related to the measures used by the countries. Do you think that measuring body temperature consists in a disproportionate measures, and why?
Actually, the question is whether measuring temperature is even effective at all. Because people with COVID-19 may not have fever, and vice versa. People with fever may not have COVID-19. So from what we know, not one data protection authority has actually advised to measure body temperature. Either they advise against it, or they leave it open, the possibility open. So all while stressing also the principles of data minimization, proportionality, transparency, etc.
Thank you very much, Bernd. And Gabriel, do you have any final remark?
I would just say that, I mean, in Switzerland, one element was to say, just don't keep the data more than what you need. So also, data retention, I think that's key. So if the situation evolves and you see that the information you collected for a valid purpose at one point of time, and you realize that the news has changed, then you would have an obligation to delete the data because you have no purpose anymore, and it would be excessive. So I think data retention is pretty key, and the governance around the data. Just be sure to apply all the measures proportionally to the data you collect. And I would say to remain creative, because we need to be creative in the way we collect personal information. Sometimes you just go blind and go directly into the topic saying, okay, let's collect name, surname, address and telephone and all of that, and you just don't need. So find ways to still collect information, maybe do have a number and store it in a way that is protected, because as we may discuss, there's a lot of attempt for breaches at the moment.
Dear all, thank you very much for this explanation on the challenges of the COVID-19 and the possible solutions. And I really look forward to hear more on which are your suggestions for businesses in the next webinar.